Okay, good morning, everybody. Nothing like waking up to a big snowstorm up here, Doc. More than we expected. So hopefully, everyone's safe and in their respected places, warm and cozy. I want to thank everybody for joining us this morning. I've been looking forward to this presentation by Dr. Klein for some time when we first spoke about it a few months ago.
Yeah,
Um, uh, Dr. Klein and I, or can I just call you Michael? Is that fine?
sure.
Michael and I met last year. I think it was up at Hudson National at Mike Adams' seminar, and I
Hmm.
was really intrigued about the information that you were sharing. I've got a pretty broad background in sports psychology and working with different people over the years, but you had some very interesting and different things to say. And we've shared some clients over the years, over the last year, and some other topics, and I'm excited for everyone to hear what you have to say.
Yeah,
Doc, I'm gonna pass it along to you. You've got an extensive
right.
biography that I didn't want to read it off. I'll let you share it and share whatever you want.
Yeah,
For everybody who's on the call, please, if you have a question, throw it into the chat. I'll get it up there, and we'll try to make this have some interaction with this because I think you're gonna say a lot of compelling things. So,
thank you.
Doc, I'll pass it off to you.
Great. Thank you, Kevin. I really just thank you so much for inviting me to spend the time with the section. And I really am excited about the topic. And um, let me just, I don't like looking at myself. I think the topic today, one of the questions I'll have of the participants is in the first half, how much of this feels a little bit review, but hopefully more practical and actionable. And it's actually targeted to everybody as coach and player. We discussed, Kevin, that we wanted
Yes.
to set this up in an interesting way where we'll address you as player also. So you'll get some use of from this right after, hopefully right from this. And then the latter part of it is also like discussing coaching and communication and actually weaving hopefully more performance stuff into all of our, your coaching and instruction. So that's the way it's set up. Um, and let me share my screen. Yeah. Okay. So as an overview, I'm going to go through peak performance and kind of go through a way to start to reconceptualize helping people with performance work and a shift away from a more trait-based system. Some of you may have seen these assessments. You sort of have pencil and paper, and it's supposed to map onto a champion's mindset. I'm going to give you some gentle critiques of that as my background as a psychologist, both as a researcher and clinician, and hopefully a fresh and different way to think about that. Going to go into great detail about managing pressure and nerves, a practical approach. Hopefully a very fresh but very important topic, the role of narcissism. The colloquial term of ego is very important in player development, and you'll see that it sort of cuts both ways. It's essential and it can be a barrier. So I'm going to try to give you a sort of dynamic way to think about that. And then hopefully some exciting ideas about expanding the notion of confidence in golf. It's so critical and it can be fragile for any player. And what I'm going to try to do is give a way of thinking about this, which helps any player maintain confidence over longer stretches of time and feel more control over sort of marking it and enhancing it. And then at the end, we're definitely going to try to put this all together and discuss enhancing your coaching practice. And as a clinician, I've done over 16,000 therapy sessions. I'm going to sort of point out three basic communication techniques I think we both use as you as instructor and coach and me as clinician and also my performance coaching. So I'm going to skip through this because I think it was in the bio. The one thing I'd like to say is um, the sources of information today are sort of from myself as psychologist and reading the literature and studies, as well as the work with the players I see for the last few years, and then also as a player, right? Not a world-class player, but I compete at, I've competed in tournaments and understand something about what that entails. So I really do, as a sports psychologist, think of myself as a golf specialist, which I think brings something. Everything on the left you recognize I'm either familiar with or I even use myself. I've used the stack system. I'm very familiar with Revision 54. You'll see me incorporating some of these ideas in the talk today. I caddy for an amazing pro in New Jersey, Danny Harcourt. Some of you may have know him or competed against him. I compete myself. And there is an evidence base, right, on motor learning and club head speed. And I try to stay very current. Because what I like to say is as a player, at myself and staying up to date on developments in golf and golf instruction, I can sort of speak the language. And players really value that. When they meet me, they say, I can just speak regularly to you. I don't have to tell you, I don't have to define what a fade is to you. You know what that is. And that's not always been their experience.
Doc, I also think as a coach, it was important. That's one of the things I really liked in discussing with you is you understand the game. So
Yeah.
for when we work with our players together, that was one of the things that also really excited me about working with you.
And Kevin, the working with the coaches as a team with the player is such a joy for me. And I always say I stay in my lane, right? You're the instructor, and I help enhance their use of the lessons and whatever you're working on and discuss that. But having worked for 20 years, it sounds like a funny analogy, but it's very similar with the psychiatrist, right? We can think we have an idea about the medication, but they do that and we do the talking. And so we collaborate as a team. So it felt very natural as I was coming into some of this work with people like you and other people I've worked with. It's really fun. And I love supporting the player. And we can all speak the same language because I know, as you're saying, I like to think that I can sort of speak golf fairly well. So
You do.
thank you. So why shift away from traits? So this is something many of you may be familiar, right? You get these sort of correlations, right? Saying, oh, this is associated with champions. Things like high motivation, someone who's goal-oriented, optimistic. A really interesting one is perfectionism, right? They have to get it just right. Now here I have a note that says needs narcissism, right? And I'll discuss that later. A player I work with where you can see just having high perfectionism isn't enough to know if the player is going to perform well, and things like focus and adaptability. But I'm asking us to think about today to see traits as dynamic skills that can be assessed and trained and put into practice. Things like your shot process, things you're familiar with, like a decision box, play box, and memory box in Vision 54. And later, we're going to talk about the golfer's self, right? Which is this independent notion of them as player and skill sets that can vary, right? They can be very good at awareness, but maybe they're not so good at transitioning out of sort of noticing that they're in a sort of negative mindset or managing their stress. So this is the major theme of the day, which is shifting to player as a developing individual over time and who can improve skills in all areas that matter in performance.
Doc,
I think,
let me ask you a question, just because we all work with different levels of players and
Mhm.
different ages of players.
Yeah, sure.
I- Is there a difference in the information? I mean, probably not too much of a difference, but is there any kind of a difference in the information for when you're dealing with a 10-year-old athlete
Right.
versus a 50-year-old athlete
Yeah.
or a 2 handicap versus a 20 handicap?
Yeah. Such a great question. I've worked with people as young as 14, so not down to 10. The juniors I've been working with, are fairly experienced competitors, and they sometimes have these, sort of amazingly mature, like kind of emotional IQ
Mhm.
already. Um, I think the older player who's not like an elite competitor, the guy who wants to win his club championship or really go from like an 8 to a 2 or something like that. Um, I think the concepts are all the same. The amount of playing tournament experience that we can draw on to sort of say, tell me about when something went wrong, or tell me about an amazing round or an amazing stretch. So it's almost like the data trove of drawing on the experiences as a player varies, right? So if you're just
Mhm.
a club player, you may not have been playing tournaments, right, your whole life. So I think what's interesting is more than age, it's level of competitive tournament experience that has come through in these, and what things they can draw on when we're developing these skills.
Great.
This slide is actual data. It's cloaked a little bit, but this is the way trait assessments work, where they're trying to say that these traits on the side correspond to higher earnings, and improvement is obviously lower scoring. So you take something like liveliness, which is a nice concept, very focused, motivated, energetic. But the problem with that is it doesn't really tell you what's causing what. This is the problem with traits and correlations at a sort of research level, is if you start to get a hot streak and you're making a little bit more money, you also may feel more lively. So it's not a small thing, right? So correlation does not equal causation. That's what we say in research. And a very good example of that are called intervening variables. Now, obviously, it's not a stats lesson, but this is a very, very important and good illustration. Very, very negative experiences, we call them life events, death of a parent, a loss of a job, something very, very traumatic, has a very strong relationship to real depression, major depression, something that's diagnosable and needs to be treated. However, you would say, oh, if something bad happens, they're going to get depressed. It's so highly correlated. But what's really actually touching and very, very easy to replicate in research is life events mediated through social support. So the extent of loving, caring, responsive people in your life will sort of determine the outcome. So there's no direct causation between a negative life event and a psychiatric disorder. And that's just a good example of how important being cautious with causation is with something like a trait. It also doesn't tell you much to how to develop it, and that's what we're going to discuss today. It's a little bit implying that like you have this trait, right? So there's one way and it's fixed. So you kind of got it or you don't. But we're going to see everything is context specific in golf, right? You need high focus, right? We know this. Players vary in their ability to focus on the context, the week. Are you in contention? Did they make two early bogeys? I actually have players who, when they're really rolling, right, they have a hard time focusing. They're in a good mood. They're rattling off birdies. So actually, excellent play can make it difficult. Obviously, you have preferred shot shapes. Water's left, right? They have a harder focus than, oh man, I can't. I got a country mile right. I have no problem focusing. So that's just an example, a few examples of what may be a concern with that. It dovetails beautifully with this research from Carol Dweck on learning, which is a fixed versus flexible mindset. And people just, I can't go into like great detail here because there's so much to cover. But if you think about it, like thinking of yourself as like gifted or not versus like he's a hard worker, there's a subtle message, which is you shouldn't have to work if you're gifted. And so sometimes there's a reduced willingness even to make mistakes and try things if they've been identified as gifted versus a hard worker. And I love this. The most powerful word in growth and development is yet, right? You could add this to your coaching tomorrow. I can't chip, coach. You can't coach yet. You hear parents about juniors talk about their skills, and I immediately try to sort of gently suggest let's shift the language. So language matters, and that's another theme that will come through today. Um, this is a fun little thing where it's a character to character with a K. It's a tangent, but I think everybody here is aware of like just such a generative time in swing instruction and knowledge about biomechanics and all of the new information and data we have. And in many ways, I think, Kevin, you would agree, like we kind of know why Nicklaus, Rory, and Hogan have more of an on-top grip and DJ and Trevino are more under. They're probably just honoring their biomechanics more or less.
Mm-hmm.
I call it the Scheffler shuffle. And so we're moving towards developing a style of play in swing that suits, the person's body and their mechanics. And I'm going to try to present a way to think about performance that's similar, that we're going to match the style of emotion, stress management, pre-shot routine, even communication style to the player. So in lieu of traits, I see like a good solution as defining and assessing the skills directly. How do you focus over the ball, not just have high focus? And the playful character to character, and that's the name of my sport performance practice, is character in the original Greek actually didn't mean good moral behavior. It meant a distinctive stamp. So my little a logo and my practice is about helping every player develop their distinctive style of managing their performance. So just to broaden performance, players can omit areas that are important that, and I want to sort of define anxiety for us a little bit as avoidance. And I'll discuss more of that in just a moment. But really think about, to be a complete player, addressing everything: equipment, the technical side, physical power and fitness, and performance, and that any area can need more or less focus. So now I'm going to get into like performance proper. For all of this is based on actual work with elite players, and how I discuss this with them and feedback I've gotten. So I hope you can see it's a practical approach. This is probably somewhat some kind of review, but we're going to define anxiety in two ways: the physical and the more mental. The worry is really what we're challenged with in golf. There's fear is an appropriate response to something right in front of us that might be dangerous. But golf's essence, we know, is it's something that may happen or not. So it's the awareness and management of future-oriented thinking. And this in and of itself helps players tremendously to have a very clear definition of what the task is and where all of us go wrong as players. So anxiety is worry about a potential negative unintended consequence or outcome, and that could be anything. Don't hit it in the water, don't chunk it, don't hit it long, first tee jitters, very common, don't leave it short, right? Don't ideas, don'ts are worry. So that's an interesting way to also start to give you more cues. If we're in a mindset and aware of a don't thought, we're in anxiety, and that's something we want to sort of rectify. Stress
Doc, let
is,
me ask you a question about Doc. Let me ask you a question about the word "don't,"
yeah,
because I've heard over the years that I've heard two sides. I said where the mind takes the word "don't" and eliminates it. So you say "don't hit
yeah,
it over the water." Your mind hears "hit it over the water," and
yep.
I've heard other people say that's a bunch of hogwash. The mind does hear "don't." What's your opinion on that, or what are your thoughts?
I would say yeah, more than opinion. I absolutely agree with this notion that brain doesn't hear don't. And it more or less, when you say don't hit it in the water, all your brain hears is hit it in the water. I'll give you I'm not a brain expert or guy so much, but what we do know for sure is that the brain is hemispheric, right? And that blood flow is one of the things they test when they look at things like fear responses or pleasure or meditation. And the
Mm-hmm.
literal blood flow through the hemispheres of your brain is different when you're in a don't or anxious thought versus a calm or present thought. So whether even if it's like, well, it doesn't exist, there is truth that your your not allowing yourself to be in the right brain, the right mindset if you're in a don't. And regardless of like, does it not exist? Does it? What I'm gonna try to make a claim for is the opposite of don't is intent. I'm going to. So if we can catch ourselves and don't, we know it's not optimal, but knowing what is optimal is something more on the order of I'm going to. So going from don't to intent is like this beautiful little equation sort of from the performance side for players to practice.
And do you know if going from don't to intent actually changes what you said about the blood flow and stuff? Like,
You can't.
is it that instant?
Oh, it's instant. Oh, I don't know a study that studied this, but
Right.
the extent to which you can shift the brain status is very quick, right? Because
Right.
we know what we do know, Kevin, is a 1 minute meditation. 1 minute meditation will have enormous metabolic changes, heart rate, cortisol, things of that nature.
Okay.
So, I'm about to get right to that. Like the physical stress is something we can address, which is one of the entry points for helping people on the course, like in real conditions.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. This is just it's a important slide, realizing that there's kind of a zone of tolerance. And most of us associate nerves and stress and anxiety in golf with hyperarousal, the overactive mind, the racing thoughts, things of that nature. But hypoarousal is something to be aware of too. That's the like withdrawing and not as interested and like, I'm 3 over through 5. I'm going to pack it in. Now, nobody does that intentionally, but that's something to be on the lookout that's happening sort of a little bit out of awareness, right? So worry initially is something that we're not aware of. So hypoarousal can be just as problematic as overactive and very nervous and feeling those physical sort of manifestations of stress. So this is something that comes from 20 years of practice, both sport performance and in my clinical practice. So how do we get better at performance if it's not a trait? Is we need a good cue. We need something to be able to latch onto, to be able to notice that we're in sort of less than optimal mind frame and accept that and adjust into something better. And so my recommendation is the best cue is time frame. And what I mean by that is catching yourself in future thinking. And any don't is future oriented thinking. A really subtle thing to tie this together is you're playing well, right? You're 4 under through 15. You have 3 holes left. If you say, oh, wow, if I just par in, I'm in 68. The thing that ties this together is if I just par in, although positive, is still future oriented. So any mind frame that's in the future is to try to be noted. And then we're going to try to accept that, right? You don't have to beat yourself up, or you really don't want to, for saying, don't see the water there or don't see out of bounds. You notice it, it's there. You're human. But accepting that and more or less being your best inner caddy and saying, it's okay that you saw that. But then bringing yourself back into the present moment as a transitional sort of phase of this, and then transitioning back to commitment and intent. So difficult tee shot, trouble or penalty left, you're seeing that, you're having a little difficulty, detaching from that, but then you notice you're in a don't. Okay, it's okay. I know left is no good. A really nice transition to is, let me just hit a bullet right up the right. Right? That's a transition to full commitment and what I'm going to do. I'm just going to lace one up the right. And here, Kevin, language matters. The language is in coordination with the body and the mind. So that inner dialogue that we know we all have, and to some extent have to manage on any given shot or moment, round or tournament, is this is to me a functional and useful approach and skill-based, right? You can be good at awareness and not so good at acceptance. And once you get through acceptance, you may be good for commitment and intent. So it's those three main skills, I think. I just want to, I'm not going to spend too long on this, but you could argue golf in the competitive environment is difficult because everything is connected. It's non-dualistic. The mind, the body, and behavior is all influencing each other. So anything in those realms can get off track. And if you have high physical arousal or you're walking too fast. So that's kind of the rub, right? Where lots of things can go wrong. But our remedies include all entry points too. So we're reversing this and saying lots of things can go wrong. There are also lots of ways to intervene and get back on track. So because thoughts create feelings and feelings create behavior and behavior is connected to those as well, we have every entry point for managing this in any given moment. And this is where the you part comes in, which is what are your favored entry points and techniques for managing your stress and worry? And so they're really
Doc, let me interrupt quickly because there's a good question from Mike Farrell about, you know, getting yourself into this is, you know, how much of it's routine? Like can you use your pre-shot routine, or does something in your routine help prevent this or get you back into it? What are your
100%.
thoughts on that?
I'm actually, I absolutely think we're depending on our routine to manage a lot of this. That's like our security blanket, and that's essentially, that's on the next slide. I really do agree with that. The fascinating thing, Kevin, there is I think is the one respecting the internal clock, right? If you know you take
Mhm.
two looks and then pull the trigger, it's honoring that, and that takes courage, right? Because if you know you have a slightly higher level of arousal, but you've checked everything, your numbers are perfect, your target is perfect. It's about having the courage to pull the trigger on time.
Right.
Because we can't force ourselves to be calm on every shot, but we can be prepared and ready to sort of execute. So I think that's a great comment, and that's something, the sharper and more reliable and dependable your routine is, that's one of the key ways to manage this. Absolutely. What I'm trying to do is just expand that, which is something as simple as focusing on the body, breathing. I really, again, as a local player, but I start to walk too fast. If I can catch myself walking too fast and return to that proper pace where that's the way I'm moving when I'm playing well, I'm moving myself back into a mindset and a body that plays well. So my idea here is, you're starting to notice deviations from being in the present or having high stress. And you're really the main thing that you're focusing on is bringing yourself back into the present moment. And there are different methods to do that. Minding your walk. Even I have one female player. She loves the crunch of the grass under her feet, which is such a beautiful one. Like very,
Mhm.
very like feeling her feet walking through the grass and literally hearing the ground is very present oriented and body oriented. You're not thinking about the future in terms of a negative or even wanted consequence or outcome. So I'm trying to say is that yeah, let's go forward. Reducing stress, there are other ways to do it. A very important one is gratitude, like this idea, one idea like pressure is a privilege, but also thinking about the people who brought you into the game and you really honor in playing. I have a junior player who's so gritty and resilient. And when things get tough, this is a person whose grandfather introduced him to the game. He's one of the best juniors in the country now. And when he needs to dig deep, he thinks about this man who gave him this love of the game. And literally, gratitude is such an enveloping, positive emotion that it can really dispel a lot of stress. And it's sort of connected to that idea of attachment. Like, Kevin, people thinking of you, what would coach say when they're competing is a lovely one, right? They're
Mhm.
attaching internally to a positive figure, and that's a great way to manage stress. Ways to think enhancing expectation is critical, right? So being your best inner caddy, for instance, and just saying, you got this, just you see your line, you see your target, let's go. Simplifying the task is another way to think. All we need to do here is the following. All we need to do here is bunt an 8-iron onto the green. Now, this is a key other main theme today, this idea of agency. And here's a subtle version where a person is creating high stress and they need to learn to be aware of that and potentially expand their repertoire. This is a sort of a example from a player I work with. Agency is a feeling that you're in control enough and equipped to achieve whatever your goal is. When you don't have any good options, stress spikes. So, well, this is a driver hole, doc. It's like, well, would you allow yourself to hit hybrid? If you get to the tee, you can't shake it off, you can't settle. It's not just that a hybrid has a smaller dispersion and probably is more likely to find the playing field. It's that having options reduces stress. So we're going to all day talk about how confidence, control, and managing your game is hinged to agency. Agency is a feeling that you have what you need to advance your goals. This is a fun thing I send, especially to my elite, collegiate players. It came, I'm just going to go through it quickly. At the highest amateur level, we know the scores are so incredible now. And there can be a subtle form of pressure, which is if I don't shoot 64 today, I'm not going to be even in the running. And so the playful thing here is, again, an agency to have control over meeting your goals is how to shoot 65 every day for the rest of your life, which is breaking this into 5 tasks that every elite player is already very good at, right? 65, 7 under can be daunting on a given day. But if we say, put the ball in play, hit the green with anything more than a wedge, because we know the tour proximity from 180 is like 30 feet or 25 feet. That's on both sides. Anywhere on the green, arguably, is a good shot. You have to wedge it close, and you need to stay tidy around the greens. And if you're going to make everything from 10 feet and in, if you do those 5 things, tomorrow you shoot 65. So it's a mindset that I can do those things that produce great outcomes rather than I need to shoot 65 today. This is what I mean by shifting it to a process-oriented way of thinking about performance and emphasizing increasing a sense of agency and control about achieving your goals. So within the think box, we talked a little bit about this. Notice your don'ts, accept that, try to turn them into do's, which is intent. This is a very subtle one, making every shot independent from the previous outcome. Some players have said their awareness is high, and they'll say, I pulled a wedge left, and I notice I aimed just a little bit right on my next approach shot. So you want to try to catch yourself making adjustments based on the previous outcome, because every shot is its independent own thing. And it's an opportunity to do something to advance your goals, but we need to fully let go of the prior shot. This is the one I think where the question came in, honoring your internal clock. And I've had players send me videos, and it's really fascinating that, and there's probably this lore about Tiger, the total duration of his swing, like never deviated by more than like less than 1/10 of a second. So if you're totally committed, you have your intent and you're over the ball, it's about having the courage to pull the trigger on time. And that is something that you can depend on as part of your confidence, your routine, and knowing, you know what, I'm going to take my 2 looks and I'm going to let it go, is a way to feel in control. You can't control where it goes, but you can control pulling the trigger. Within the play box, I mean, this is actually, I think, something, Kevin, also for us to discuss. It's also in the coaching thing area, which is cues and feels, right? The research on motor learning is extremely clear, and it's been focused on golf to a great extent. Gabrielle Wolf's research on motor learning is extremely well executed and consistent, which is the most durable cues are what are called external and distal. External, you're all going to recognize this, which is I literally see that branch there. I'm going to hit this right at the branch. It's going to fall a foot right onto the pin. So it's not about mechanics. So anything distal is further from the body. So the research is clear that thinking about risks or takeaways or anything is less durable over time than something that's external and distal, further from the body. So we could discuss that, but I just wanted to include it because it's interesting to have that discussion. I want to, it's interesting. They were interviewing Wyndham Clark the other day after his amazing 60, and he kept using language like positive and negative. And I just want to be super specific for us here, for everybody here, and especially for younger players, right? Coming up, juniors, people getting more and more experience. Positive thinking, we're going to define, at least for me, and I do with my players, is anything that enhances expectations, agency, and generates positive emotion. And negative thinking does have multiple forms. You've already heard me emphasize future-oriented don'ts, right? Worries about the future, avoidance thoughts is a negative thought. Past experiences, clearly, not letting go of a putt from the past green. There are social factors too. This comes up with juniors a lot, Kevin, right? Do my peers respect me? Do others think I play slow? Those are also distracting thoughts that are negative because they're increasing the player's stress. And there's a shame and embarrassment component there. And so subtle motivational ones, which are, you get off to a slow start and they don't even want to be here. That's that hypoarousal, that sort of withdrawing. And that's where you got to dig deep and find a reason to be there. And there's a good example where grandpa, that junior, he would never want me to, walk off the course or stop trying. So we're sort of looking for ways to remotivate ourselves because I don't even want to be here is a feeling that we get. So the moral of the story here is, it's playful. There's the fox and the hedgehog. The fox is good at many things. The hedgehog knows one big thing, is thinking about the toolkit for how you notice stress and worry, manage it, and get back to intent and commitment. And the cool thing that I've seen over the work with the players over these years is there are different stylistic differences. People have different ways to accomplish these tasks and improve their skills in these areas. And I'm going to talk more about, the variety of ways people do that in a bit. Are there any questions? Maybe this is a sort of a good place to stop, actually, if there's any questions or comments.
Haven't seen any questions yet.
Okay. So how are we doing on, okay.
Good.
I'm going to shift into okay, so just keep going. This is
let's keep going.
Very different topic. Narcissism, which, yeah, you would associate as a sort of like ego, self-image, but it's complicated. Narcissism is a healthy, normal part of development. A sort of definition is, as a kid, it's that like exhibition. We've seen kids saying, watch me, look at me, right? They want like the gleam in the mother's eye. They want you to say, oh, you're so strong, you're amazing. And the second part of narcissism is not about the self, but attaching to powerful other, we call them objects in psychoanalysis. So it's the other, right? You're amazing and you care and are interested in me, so I must be amazing. That's another way children grow, and this is a normal part of development. And the grandiose self, if all goes well, sort of turns into normal self-esteem, self-confidence, and subtly also empathy. If I've been cared about and thought about and responded to, I'm more likely to do that for others. So let's apply this to golf. So grandiosity is good. Well, if you're going to say you're going to win the US Amateur, you need to be willing to say that. So a sense of greatness and strength, and it's the foundation of ambition, is essential to play high-level golf. But as we know, or I'm going to get into more details, there's a downside to too much grandiosity and self-confidence bordering in arrogance. So it is also a defense against feelings of worthlessness, powerlessness, and emptiness. So people inflate and talk and brag, and that's the thing that can grate on people. So let's be more specific about its downside. So the darker side of narcissism is some of the activities are in the service of maintaining the ego. There's an interesting thing, like so many players not taking enough club. They're commenting how far they carry their irons when you see them short on hole after hole. And sometimes you could say they're chasing that idealized image of themselves. They want to believe they carry 7-iron 175. So another way high narcissism can burden the player is the sense that, like, how could the golf gods do this to me, right? I'm entitled to play well and make my short putts. So someone whose narcissism is working against them can have this sense of, like, even just a few missed putts, how could this happen to me? And that frustration and anger sort of bleeds right into their performance and poor focus, blasting a drive when they don't need to, and things of that nature. So golf in particular has a fascinating, Kevin and I were talking about this a little bit, fascinating, a little bit of a double standard about stating your ambition and believing how great you are. There's this famous, video or interview where Patrick Reed is identifying himself as one of the best players in the world. He was young and he had already won several times. He caught a lot of flack for that. But then you're also criticized. They're saying, well, if you're going to tee it up and not believe you can win, why bother entering the tournament? Is a sort of aspirational mindset we actually often encourage people to have. So this is interesting that golf itself struggles with its use and inclusion of grandiosity and narcissism in our sport. This is just super cool that the Arccos data reveals that it even is a skill, right? It's also a skill to know your carry distances and be realistic, because here what I'm showing you is over millions of shots that by handicap, the difference between stated carry and actual carry closes. So the lower handicap player on the left is actually much more accurate in saying, oh, I think I carry 7 around 170 and they're at 160-ish. But it's almost it's 100% more error in a higher handicap. So this idea today of, like, performance is a set of skills, and introducing this idea of grandiosity and narcissism is accurate self-appraisal is a skill. And that's kind of a fun one to start to think about.
I think we've all seen that. We've all seen that when someone comes for a lesson or a club fitting and you ask
Right?
them, how far do you carry your 7-iron? I'm like, oh, 170. I'm like, okay, well, today it's going 144. So we're going to go off of
So
that.
Kevin, what's so fascinating we're going to talk about in the coaching section is assessment and that initial history and asking questions. Asking how far do you carry your 7-iron is a great question, partially because you're actually getting a window into how accurately they appraise their game.
Yeah.
So
Right.
a player who says 144 is actually going to be relatively easier to work with on average, because they come in realistic and knowing where they are rather than telling you where they imagine they are versus where they are.
Yeah. I think that's one of the challenges of being a coach is
Yeah.
we have to manage expectations and what they think that they're doing and what they are actually doing, and find a way to soften the blow and say, you don't start laughing at them. No, you don't hit it that far. You're hitting it this far. You find a way to do that.
So soften the blow. Let's keep that in mind. The communication tools and techniques in the coaching section is precisely designed to help with softening the blow. So we can connect that last section to exactly what you said there, right? Like that can be a
Yeah.
challenge with several players.
I got a good question here from
Okay.
Rob. It says, how do we work on our narcissism belief without getting wrapped up with future thinking? Um, the question disappeared. It says,
So
I'm
interesting.
going to make a birdie versus letting birdies happen.
Okay. I hear two questions there, which is the management of identity over time right? Belief, whereas, being realistic and even, if need be modest, and the specific, I'm going to make a birdie versus, just taking it a shot at a time. So I can
Yeah.
respond to both, but I hear two questions there. I
Let's
think
let's go with the first question is how do we work on narcissism or belief without getting wrapped up in future thinking?
um it's actually sort of in the next slide or two. I think identifying the areas, the way you think about yourself, which obviously has to be accurate, why you're great, it actually varies from player to player. And I mean, I can just what I'm saying is you can know that you're great and can be a great player because you know yourself. Like some of the players I see are very introspective and they actually sometimes come in a little sheepish. Like I'm not the guy who walks around like I'm the alpha male and I'm the best player in the world. I do have a deep sense of self-belief, but part of that comes from something like this. Like I'm not an egomaniac in the sense that I'm realistic about my skill areas. I know my day, I know my stats. I know I'm honest with myself that I need to work on greens and regulation because it's not where it needs to be. Rather than because the other problem with too much self-belief is it's a learning killer. It's difficult for the
Mhm.
person who's wrapped up in that idealized image to acknowledge my iron play isn't that strong and I really need to bear down and work on it. So one of the ways I'm going to talk about confidence is this maintaining the self-confidence in that question over a longer stretch of time, which is a set of beliefs about you as a player that are durable and you can always sort of count on. For instance, work ethic. I'm great because I'll outwork everybody, right? That's a durable part of identity and confidence for a particular player.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And
Um,
I
Another
think,
very good question here for, go ahead.
okay, go ahead. Sure. No, go ahead.
No, no, I was going to say there's another very good question from Greg. Where do you find your highest performers have their attention over the ball and during the swing? Is it more than one place to have and be successful, like on the target or on the swing, or you know, or should you just focus on one area?
I love that. It comes up. So, can I not defer to? I'm going to go into that in great detail in like the next set of.
Perfect. Yep.
Um, so it sounds like there's real interest in the play box, right?
Yeah.
Where they get disrupted. And that might be also a really exciting topic for discussion too, because I also don't want to come across as like I have all the answers. The whole idea today is it becomes in my performance work, it's a collaborative discussion with them, drawing on positive rounds and shots. Like sometimes people don't even know what that is yet, and that we identify that over time in the work, in the sessions, and then that becomes another part of their confidence that they
Right.
know how to manage their game once they've left the box and gotten over the ball.
Perfect. And then can you just give a brief explanation of the difference between a trait and a skill?
Okay, so I think a trait is somebody's okay. So the classic trait we all know is extroversion and introversion, right? We no
Right.
longer believe introversion is a problem, but this idea that it's a stable personality style that crosses many environments and situations and people.
Mhm.
The idea of trait is that it's fairly stable over time and setting.
Right.
Whereas a skill would be I'm I need to manage like my anxiety at a cocktail party where I don't know a lot of people, maybe off the charts. But in a group of at the section meeting, I see one person I know, I'm so comfortable. But another person may say, I'm less comfortable at the section meeting because I'm wondering what people are thinking about me. At the cocktail party, I'm fine. Nobody knows who I am.
Right.
Isn't that so that's where you get I get excited. that you'd be like, well, duh, of course you're more comfortable at the section meeting. You know everybody. And I would say, aha, you're more comfortable at the section meeting. The other person's more comfortable at the cocktail party. Every facet of golf performance we're discussing today is that personalized, at least in the work I'm doing with players.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. Okay, let's move on. Thank you.
Yeah, great. So let's move into this, at sometimes almost mystical notion of confidence in golf. So I think the most, a really useful thing to take from today, is that cut off, Kevin? Is it hard to see?
Just a little, yeah.
Okay, but I've tried to, it's the same word.
Yeah.
Confidence in golf, I think the foundation is a sense of control, but not necessarily ball control. Control over your process, control over yourself, control over more and more control over your mind. And what I'm trying to say is confidence equals control equals good options equals agency. And agency, again, that's what we're striving for, is a feeling that you're equipped to accomplish the task at hand on any given day or on a given shot. And I'm going to go into more detail now. So this is almost gospel. And this is I hope something you can take immediately from today. I asked the player, how are you? It's often, we almost always, we love to meet after tournaments, right? Because you have fresh data. It's interesting and useful to digest that and move forward. How did you play? I hit it well. I couldn't find the center of the bat. That is so interesting, right? Because how did you play is being equated with ball striking. So the conflation of ball striking with outcome is often out of awareness. And there was this lovely moment, with a really, excellent female player I work with. I said, how did you play? I hit it well. What'd you shoot? 74. Next week, how'd you play? I couldn't find the center of the face all day. What'd you shoot? 69. And then we laughed together, right? Because it was this moment of insight that I've been trying to gently nudge her towards this awareness that we want to expand the definition of how well you played past ball striking, because that's not something you can control every day. So focusing on areas of things that you can control that contributes to great play, and that I actually said, embrace your inner Seve, right? Seve hits it all over the map, and then he shoots 68 and you have no idea how he did it. He just wanted to get the job done. So that's an example of how to start to address confidence is look inward and ask yourself, am I equating playing well with hitting it well? And try to catch yourself and think about that, and we'll move on. I'm going to try to expand that. Well, what do I do if I catch myself there?
Right. So, but as a coach, if I'm going to ask my player a question after a round,
yeah,
should I change the question and not so much how did you play, but make it two questions? One is how did you score?
Yes.
And then go into how did you play?
Yeah. And actually, it's okay to ask how did you hit it, but it's actually several questions, Kevin. How did you score? How did you hit it? And then how did you manage yourself? Did you have any really difficult moments that you brought yourself out of?
Yeah, I think it's important that we separate all of those little areas, because
Yes.
as a player, it's how did I play is like you said, it's I scored, I shot 74. I didn't hit it, I hit it great, but I shot 74. I didn't hit it well and I shot 69. But we need to kind of separate the different threads. And I think that's important for younger players or less experienced players to make sure we're able to separate the difference for them.
I think that's a great point. And I really find what I hope is fascinating here is the elite player, it's their Achilles. This is actually very common. So the joke I make is a 15 handicap doesn't have this problem because they're not expecting it to come out of the center of the bat. They've never had that problem where they've coped with it being all over the face their whole life. So actually, ironically, a club player sometimes is a little better at coping with not striking it well because they don't have unrealistic expectations that it's going to be flushed every day, all day. So this is just a very specific one to good players. But the expansion of the inquiry of asking about areas of the game is precisely what I'm hoping to put on the table here today for us as player and coach.
Right.
And
I mean, does this go back to the old Hogan statement that he used to say he used to hit 5 shots around that he really liked? Would that be the same?
it's about it is the same because what he's doing is he's actually setting a bar. Agency is control. Control is I have what I need to accomplish my goal, the task at hand. The genius of I hit 5 good shots is he only expects to hit 5 shots. So the probability is he hit more than 5, but subtly he was saying to himself, as long as I hit 5 or 6 great shots, I'm happy.
Right.
So there's a genius in setting the expectation ironically low. It actually dovetails with the question is how do I stay confident? Right?
Mm-hmm.
Am I gonna set the bar for how many good shots at 5? That doesn't sound like a confident player. But subtly you're enhancing your confidence because you feel very in control of meeting that goal and surpassing it.
Right. And I think that goes into the perfectionism.
The perfectionism is I think a broad topic to discuss. Because somebody is perfectionistic who's willing to spend 4 hours practicing to develop they miss 2 flop shots and they're willing to spend 4 hours until they're satisfied and leave and feel like they own that shot again, I think is very useful. And you want to look for that in your players. An urge to master is what it's called in the expertise literature. However,
Mm-hmm.
perfectionism, I have a junior player right now, right, who's an amazing player, but she cannot yet process not hitting, off center shots. Her perfectionism is so high that she deems herself, she wins a tournament by 3. How'd you play? I won, but I sucked. This is a tragedy, right? Because she
Right.
mishit 4 or 5 shots. So perfectionism also cuts both ways, and is an interesting topic. Um, so what I'm introducing today is this idea of expanding the mountain of confidence. And what I mean that is we have these also beautiful illustrations, especially from Tiger. Like if someone's saying they won with their B- game today, what they're telling you is they're the most confident player who's ever lived, right? Because they're saying, I'm not even playing well, but I know I can show up and win. So that's what I mean by like not setting the bar of perfect ball striking every day, every shot, is a person who's able and believes and knows that they can score well and play well and even win a tournament without their best game is extremely confident. This is a direct quote. I can't make a bogey today was the most amazing. Talk about like, Kevin, you said like the age of the player. That's a 15-year-old boy. What was it like today? I couldn't make a bogey today. You see how he's absolutely skipped over ball striking and he
Yeah.
stepped. He said, it doesn't matter what I do today. I can't make a bogey. Like it gives me chills. It's like this is the optimal mindset, which is I'm capable of doing this in more than one way. And there's a real subtlety, especially in your junior players, I think, video, easy communication. There's an ironic quality to how many bad shots can you hit and still believe you're playing well, right? If I miss 2 wedges and I'm no longer playing well, I may be taking away my own sense of belief and confidence. I am undermining my own confidence if there's too few a shots that I deem there's a swing problem or a need to immediately contact my coach or instructor. So what I mean by the expanding the mountain of confidence is what we were saying, depending on your routine. A big part of the mountain can be, I have a great routine. I follow it every time. I get my number. I pick my target. I know how to pick my target. I see the shot in my mind. I get over the ball. I take 2 looks and I'm going to pull the trigger. That's part of your confidence because that's what you can control. You can control your process, but you can't control the outcome. So that's one example. Scoring with, right, believing that you can score with less than perfect ball striking is a way to expand your sense of confidence. And, you know, the idea like everybody lives at the top of the mountain in Flushville. So that's great too. But what I'm trying to introduce today is a dynamic viewpoint on confidence in golf, which is accessing aspects of your game. Also, I never give up. I don't care if I bogey the first 2 holes, I can still shoot 63 today. That is a very gritty, right, resilient person. And that's part of your confidence. The ability to believe rounds are dynamic over time and that there are ups and downs. We want to add to the mountain of confidence over time. And that this mountain is by no means finished. We want to, as a group, right, as a community, if we like this idea that confidence is a dynamic process that you are engaged in an ongoing way internally, then we're starting an expanded conversation about confidence, I hope. So
what would be a successful week here in Milwaukee? Two things. I played 4 solid rounds. We got off to a good start today. I can do that for 3 more days, and I'll be very happy. And a victory would be awfully nice too. A victory. Ooh. Do you think? To me, that comes off as a little cocky or brash, especially talking to the other guys on tour that have been out here for years and years and years, and certainly an incredible amateur record. But what do you say to those guys? Well, when you come out here, you know what I'm saying. Your first pro tournament, you say, I can win. Oh, I understand that. I've always figured that why go to a tournament if you're not going there to try and win?
Okay, so most of you probably have seen that. And my point here is to illustrate a young up-and-coming player who ends up being exactly who he was and is, and a style of confidence, right? At 20 or however old he is there. Now, what I want to show you here is something very different. Another amateur you may have heard of, named Nick Dunlap. Nick did not talk about golf or competing in the way Tiger did. It was actually so counterintuitive. He leans into vulnerability, transience, sort of almost fragility, the fragile nature of golf and opportunities. It's like he's a Zen master. The most nervous I've ever been. These are direct quotes. I transcribe them. Just trying to breathe as much as I can, walk slow, right? He reveals his stress management style. Try to do everything slow because in that moment, everything speeds up. In contrast to Tiger, opportunities, there's not a ton of them. There are a lot of guys that are really, really good that should be out here, implying I'm just lucky to be here. I want to embrace the moment. Whether it turned out the way I wanted it or not, I was going to learn from it. Maximizing agency. I can't lose here. If I win, amazing. If I lose, I'm going to learn and grow. But I want you to, the language is very different. And so this idea of expanding the range of style and performance, even within confidence, you could argue we cover the gamut from a steely Tiger-like style to someone who's pliant, is aware that golf is difficult and fluid and embraces and accepts that, but then bears down and tries to take care of their business. I'm going to give you more examples. Within the play box, the question about within the decision box and play box. So I just want to go through this in terms of self-image, right? Even self-image has style. Those were 2 examples in Dunlap and Tiger. But let's be more specific. The basis at the identity level of being a great player has many facets. I'm great because I'm me. I'm not being cheeky. Some people just have this natural, I don't have this baseline sense, I am great, I've always been great because I'm me. And that, as long as in the narcissism side, they have the ability to appraise themselves and learn and grow and not just manage that ideal image of themselves, it's very useful. But what I'm here to tell you today is this isn't the only way to be a confident, great player. You can also say, I'm great because I know me, right? I'm introspective, I'm realistic, I know where I need to work on things. I'm very good at the awareness side on the course. I catch myself in my future-oriented sort of don't worry thoughts, things of that nature. That's a skill that can be a really great basis of confidence. Another one is I'm great because I'm relentless. This is the person who from go just will not stop trying. They don't care where they are. They don't care if they're not in contention. They grind on every shot, and that's a part of their self-image. They love and believe in themselves and like themselves because every shot they give 100% effort. It's actually one of the things I love about Danny Harcourt. And he's an amazing player in part because of that. He is very good at that. I'm great because I'll outwork everyone. This is obviously an old idea, that work ethic, and in the greats, Kobe Bryant, Jordan, people taking 1,000 extra shots, staying until dark. But that is part of a person's identity and can be the basis of their confidence that is durable over time. That's part of what makes me great. Obviously, the idea is you could draw from any of these fountains. And Kevin, my hope is it's, it should be questioned, what else? This is just my first four. This notion of confidence and self-image and belief as a dynamic process.
Mm-hmm.
So in going back to how do people handle things in the decision box and play box, this may be useful and bear on that question. I call it the DJ versus Bryson method. In tough pressure situations, I don't get nervous. I'm so occupied with the process. Bryson, we used to, there's a joke like he wanted the barometric pressure because it's a 1%, effect on carry distance. This is what I want to share with you today. It's not about the dew point. It's not about, the wind, whatever. It's about him using information to manage nerves. What he's saying is, I'm like an engine that feeds on information, and I don't have any time to be nervous. I'm so involved in my process. So Bryson's arousal management approach is more cognitive or intellectual. Contrast that with a notion of Professor DJ, right? Who prefers almost more of a Zen empty mind, right? A beginner's mind. I want a number. I want you to give me a number and tell me where to hit it. That's all I want to know. So this framing of empty mind and just sort of present mind to a high idling engine on information is to begin the conversation of how do you manage best over the ball or getting into shots? Where do you fit on some of these parameters? And I love, this is a quote, DJ's, the way I see it, there are only two things that can happen. You hit a good shot or a bad. He's got the Yogi Berra style, right? Yeah. But this, isn't it so great? He's basically saying, there's nothing to worry about. It's either going to be bad or good. So he doesn't have any worries. When he's playing well, he gives no Fs, right? That's an amazing mindset to be
in. Yeah, it's a great quote, but that's hard to do. I don't know if I could do that.
It's hard to do.
Yeah, right. I think you're either, you're at one extreme, which is Bryson, your other extreme is DJ. They always say, I forget who I was talking about this with. He goes, you want to be really intelligent, like DJ, Bryson, to where you can do it, you process all the information, and it's just like a regular person, or you want to be at the other end of the spectrum, where DJ can barely spell ox,
right?
And it's like you want to live in that area.
You know what, Kevin? Yeah, go ahead. Sorry, I know.
And so it's hard to manage that, because for the rest of us that are in between,
sure,
we really have to learn how to find where our little space is, so we can kind of balance out the two.
Right. And I've given this a long time to think about it, which is I think DJ's a lot smarter than he lets on, right? You don't end up there. I think that's part of his persona almost as like almost like a cloaked, I know he's not like going to be an astrophysicist, but I think I've thought about this. I was like, boy, that's why I said Professor DJ. He's probably much wiser than we give him credit for because he knows what style works for him. And point well taken. If you're in the middle and then the fascinating question is, are sometimes you're working better off information or sometimes I had this day with a caddy out in Bandon Dunes. I'm more of the DJ, Bryson style. And I had no idea what I was doing, right? I'd never seen the course. I'm a giddy to be there. I have a caddy. He just told me where to hit it and how far to hit it. And I couldn't miss. I was like, this is amazing. Like, just tell me where to hit it and how far to hit it. For once, I didn't have my mind all cluttered. So it's just an example where maybe a Bryson can sometimes be a DJ.
Yeah. Yeah, I think someone wrote an interesting question and said, "Would this explain why the caddy or the player relationship is so important, keeping the player in the right mind?" I would say 100%. And honestly, I think this is my own opinion. I don't know for a fact, but I think this is one of the reasons why Cameron Young has gone through so many caddies in the last year and a half.
Wow, interesting.
Right, where he went from his buddy who was caddying for him, who helped get him on tour, and then he went through, and then he and Paul Tesori split, and Paul, from what I understand, is a micromanager, gives a lot of information.
Yep.
And I think Cameron's more on the side of what's my yardage, what's this, what's that, let me go. And when you start getting too much information, it starts to bring in indecision amongst the player.
Yep.
The other side is if you don't get enough information, it also brings in some indecision. So it's an important balance when having a caddy.
I think it's such a great point. It's sort of, I think it's in there, right? So this is me trying to start to put together some of these ideas and hopefully in conversation with the section and you, right, to further develop this, which is these are all parameters that involve style, right? They're not you got it or you don't. And one of them is social, the caddy or the group, right? The chatting, the Chi-Chi who just wants someone to talk about soccer all day till the second they get to the ball, or you're in your tiger hole and it's like, hello, goodbye. And knowing what you need on a given day, or you have a style, and that somebody can do it. And you're right, Kevin, not all caddies can shift so easily, right? They may have a style where they love the numbers, they want to give you all this information, and it's a mismatch. So matching player and caddy is a great example of style and performance that goes well beyond something like, swing and technique and equipment and stuff like that. That this is knowing yourself, is knowing over time how you work with a caddy. And so there's also a fascinating one that really something I've noticed is there are tinkerers and there are players that are more hard-headed. And I'm a tinkerer. It's terrible. Like I may have something that works, and then 6 months later, I'm not even using the same club, and I have no idea why. Like that's not good. It's a knowing and hard-headed person is they don't want to change things. So this is a subtle thing that I think people have proclivities there, especially as teachers, just listening for where they are on this a little bit from tinkerer to hard-headed. I love this idea of shot preference, which is just owning one, or like what gives me confidence and control is I work on my 9 windows. And even if I don't have 3 one day, I got the other 3. And I think both are great options for feeling you're in control of your game and have high agency, if that makes sense. The emotional engine that we've been talking about a lot. Like, think about it. Like, Hatton is entertaining, but he is a very highly emotional player. He may just let it burst out and then he moves on. And if you listen to the full Dunlap, right, he's really trying to tamp it down. He's trying to idle very low, breathe. Inside, he's saying I felt so much nerves, but the amount of emotional expressiveness is a stylistic feature. We talked a little bit about confidence, which I think is really exciting. I like confidence in control variables, right? For the good player, how do you take 5 yards off? How do you add a few yards? How do you flight it? And knowing how you do that, really being clear. whether you do that with stance or grip down or shape of the shot to take a few yards off, that could be a source of confidence that you're really dialed in how you make, especially with the wedges and the close game. Putting is one where just like knowing, you see every putt is straight, you use aim point, you see it at the whole curvature. I'm just trying to make it, some of these I think are very familiar to everyone here. My point here is look at all of the different areas of self-knowledge and style that add up to being a really dynamic, consistent player. And then something like information preference. So maybe these change, maybe these wiggle and change, or sometimes it's like, wow, this really is my style, and I can start to depend on that, and that's part of my confidence. So here I'm moving into the coaching piece. So that's the performance content I had prepared, and the questions have been so amazing. This is why I'm here, to discuss and engage with people. So it's a good great place to, any comment? Also,
I think, well, I have one question. The question just came in. Mm-hmm. I don't think there's a short answer to this, and maybe we can get to it at the end, but I'll let you think about it a little bit. Bill asked, please discuss what it takes to become the best golfer you've ever been at the age of 69. And that might be a 4-hour conversation. I don't know. That might be a short answer.
It's obviously both. It's a 4-hour conversation. I have an answer. I actually have an answer. It's the book Simplicity, the Yellen book. What that involves is, I actually have chills because I really do discuss this with the players. The source of belief is that you have played great golf. Obviously, you're 69 now, but you have played great golf. It's very important to locate that which he just described. The best golf I've ever played in my life right now at 69 is already inside of you, and your job is to access it. It's very important to not locate it out there that you're looking for. The point of the book, Simplicity, is you have the ability to hit every shot today perfectly. It's in you. You've hit a long putt. You've hit perfect irons. You've hit perfect drives. You've putted it, chipped it, drove it, bunkered it, managed it amazingly. You know how to do that. So you locate that inside of you, and your task is to allow it to express itself. To access what you already have is the key to playing your best golf every day for the rest of your life. It's also a 4-hour conversation, but the answer is you can already do that. Talk about a challenge of belief. Can you start to believe that all I need to do, agency, is access what I already have? And you could go out and shoot 59 tomorrow.
Interesting.
The flip side to that is a appraisal, right, of golf skill. Let's get right to golf knowledge, skill, and identity. Where are the areas that could use? It's a paradox. You both have it already, and simultaneously, there are things you could work on you've not worked on and enhance and develop. If the whole talk has a theme, it's a set of trainable skills. They're not static and fixed, and some people have it and some people don't. So believe the paradox. You're already a perfect and complete player, and there's room to grow. And you can, at 69, be the best player you've ever been, and maybe one of the best in the country and the world. Because grandiosity, you have to believe it.
Mm-hmm. Doc, that was just a beautiful answer. I'm glad we got that recorded. I'm gonna watch that again. That was great.
Me too, hopefully. Yeah. It's a beautiful question. Sometimes I don't want to get too woo-woo on people, but the idea of paradox is very important in golf. Can I wax philosophical for 1 second?
Go for it.
It's a beauty. There's also evidence of it in there's some of these great golf films, you know, like the one on Tiger, The Perfect Season, or it's not the right title, but there's these great excerpts of Stevie being interviewed also when he held all 4 majors. It was the Bob May, it was the PGA, and he had to make I think it was the 6-footer to get into the playoff, actually, not to win. And Steve is chuckling to himself. He's like, he's got the biggest putt, right, at that moment in that career, right? It's like so much pressure. And he says, and Tiger turns to me and says, Steve, this is 6-footer downhill. My mother could make this putt. It's not just that his mother could make this putt. What Tiger is doing there, I think, is holding the tension in the meaning and non-meaning of that putt, which is, it's also just a ball resting on grass that he's going to roll in a hole. So it doesn't mean anything. There's no such thing as the PGA. I'm getting deep with you because that's true. It's just a ball lying on the ground that he's going to roll in a hole. It's also true. It's to get into a playoff for the PGA and extend his legend as the best, or, you know, be Tiger Woods. Holding the paradox that it's both meaningful and just a ball on the ground is critical, because it can crack in either direction. It's like, oh, what's the difference? Almost like it doesn't matter, or it matters so much that the stress goes through the roof. So the paradox of embracing it's just a ball sitting on the ground, anybody could roll this in the hole, and also embracing that it's the most important moment of your career, or that moment is the champion's mindset that I also wanted, if I had a moment to describe that. Embracing the contradiction. It both isn't real and it couldn't be realer. Saying my mom could do this is what Stevie says, is to say it's just a ball sitting on the ground. I'm going to roll it in a hole. So he's both embracing the moment and recognizing, you know, it's just a ball. He's going to roll 6 feet into a cup.
Do you find that people that are exceptional at either specific areas of the game or different things in life have that kind of perspective? Because I remember a conversation. When I was Jim McLean's personal assistant back in the early 90s, he was working with Brad Faxon. We all know Brad's probably one of the top 4, 3 or 4 putters everyone considers. And we're sitting on the putting green, and Jim goes, all right, Brad, you got a 3-footer to win whatever. I think it was the tournament up in Hartford. He goes, what's going through your mind?
Right.
And Faxon goes, nothing.
Right.
And Jim looks at me, I look at Jim, and I'm like, wait a minute. I could not, this is how long ago it was. He goes, it's a 2-year exemption, $500,000 for the win.
Right.
And you're going, what do you mean nothing? How could nothing be going through your mind? And Faxon said, he goes, Jim, whether I make or miss this putt, I have a family that loves me.
Right. I
already have money in the bank, and I have my health.
Gratitude, Kevin. Gratitude. Exactly.
Right.
The presence of mind, perspective taking. Yes.
But my question is, do you find that, because Brad knows he was an exceptional putter.
Right.
He'll admit he was a mediocre ball striker, maybe not even a great driver of the ball. But he knows he has, he couldn't bring that same confidence. If you stood him up on the 18th hole at Augusta with a 1-shot lead, could he hit the ball and play? Right. And I don't think he could have that same mindset.
Yes.
Because I don't think he's got that confidence in his game. So I think I'm
going to be bold and lean into the motor learning research that I just touched on. And this is my empirical data. This is players, world rankings, headed towards turning professional in discussions. What is fascinating to me, Kevin, is in this vein is people have, just like you said, it is so common, unfortunately, great putter, not necessarily the best ball striker, or the opposite. Great tee to green, maybe struggles on the greens. I am not suggesting they're opposing, but it is a thing that comes up. What has been blowing my mind this year is that the players, whatever skill set is their best, is they use exclusively external cues. What do I mean by that? There's a guy who plays, is an extremely good putter. He's a good ball striker, but his claim is this version. I said, what do you think about when you're putting? He says, not nothing. He says, well, I mean, I just see my line. I see my line and I roll the ball over the line. That is an external cue. Nothing about grip, nothing about stroke, nothing about, taking it inside and hitting a draw, nothing. It's a ball. I just roll it over a line. The guy who can't miss it out of the center of the bat, what do you think about when you're hitting a tee shot? I don't think about anything. He says, I love hitting. First of all, I love hitting the driver. And I just see, I pick a window he says, I see a window and I hit it at the window. What do you think about when you're putting? He's like, well, I'm trying to get my elbow. Do you see how, isn't it fascinating to me? This is really exciting stuff. Is it possible that part of the skill set barrier is that you do see preferences for external cues in the highest skill area, and almost as like a way to try to improve it or make it better, a sort of reliance on more mechanics as a safety blanket. But the truth of the matter, at least in the evidence base, is the courage to use external cues and just react to what you want the ball to do is superior. In every game, in golf, in volleyball, in rowing, in everything, in basketball, they've tested everything. So one thing I ask in every player is what cues they use and gently discuss the idea that external distal cues are superior. It's a researcher, it's like hopefully a good psychologist answer. There's an evidence base about this in skill sets and performance. And this has begun to be a useful framing of it.
Yeah, I think that's a nice segue into this question from Pete. He says, talking about the zone or flow, is, what's happening when a player gets into that zone?
I love this
and how can we get into that more often?
I mean, I got chills. The zone and flow is nothing more or less than total present-oriented awareness. So the reason time frame is such a useful cue, in my viewpoint, is the more you catch yourself in a don't or a worry thought and bring yourself back into the present, you're turning yourself towards being in flow. Because I've read the book many times. There's a book called Flow by the guy, nobody can pronounce his last name. And it's every chapter, the theme is that the universal linkage in flow is total immersion in the task at hand in a joyful, relaxed, focused way, right? Again, paradox, relaxed and focused. So when you're working on your performance skills, about not thinking about the 3-putt, only thinking about assessing your lie, picking a target and hitting it, you're playing towards being in flow. So I don't think we have to just wait for it as some mystical thing. Our performance skills, as they improve, guide us into the zone. What an amazing thought, which is you have control, you have agency over when you'll enter that zone and flow. If you're playing towards being totally present-oriented, only on this shot, thinking, what is the best way to advance my ball to give me the best chance to make the best score on this hole, your mindset is closest to being in the zone. So practice being in the zone and you will be. It's not an esoteric thing. It's present-oriented mind is zone, but it's an active process, right? The mind wanders. If I par in, I win the US Open, it's not just the thing that I get irked about, and hopefully this is why we're here, is just stay in the present is a falsehood. The mind wanders, right? Anybody who's done meditation, stream of consciousness. So it's an active process of noticing you're either in the past or the future, accepting that and transitioning back to the present. That's why it's so exhausting. Those last 3 holes, you might have to catch yourself 100 times. Slow yourself down, breathe, focus on just now. Don't feel bashful or bad that your mind keeps floating to the future. The task is always the same. Catch yourself, accept that, transition into the task at hand, and get to an intentional, committed thought about what you're going to do with your ball. Always will be you practicing towards being in the zone.
Yeah. All right. I want to be mindful of our time, and you've got some really great information coming up that we can apply.
Great.
So let's move on.
Yeah, let's move on. And I can go through this fairly quickly, Kevin, so we have time to discuss it.
Yeah, perfect.
Okay, let's just go. So I'm going to talk about like the basic coach's toolkit, which I'm going to focus on assessment, empathy, and inquiry. And this is where, like, being playful, like your job and my job isn't that different, right? Like seeing clients for regular sessions, engaging in change behavior through a relationship, regularly scheduled meetings. So Kevin and I have discussed something I'm going to call like the common pitfalls that can creep in filling lesson time. Something like explaining too much and considering the balance of talking and listening, which is a cliche, but I'm going to give you some tools to sort of, all of us can always try to tip ourselves more towards listening. Something else maybe is, I've seen this, like I've been practicing and seeing lessons going on, and almost like seeing a player struggling and seeing the instructor get frustrated, so they start hitting the shots and demonstrating, I think could be construed a little bit like a pitfall. And my guess is less common now, but an excellent player who's spending too much time telling the student about, their recent high finish in a tournament and stuff like that. So the thing I think that is difficult is, what do I do in lieu of these things? So I'm going to skip past this. We can come back to it because we've been discussing like seeing the student as an individual with a golfing self is interesting, right? When did they start playing? When did they get serious? When did they play their best? Have they had setbacks? What are their goals? It's almost like taking a history of them as player. And they can often easily answer, what's the worst shot you ever hit? Well, I had a putt to get into the playoff for the club championship, right? We have these amazing sort of narratives of our life as golfer. And one thing to start to key into more is like the emotional challenges and distress beyond the motor learning of the swing. Hearing things like, I will never get this chipping thing down, you can say, oh, that's an opportunity to gently address their learning mindset, right? And then this is really important to get to empathy. You feel like, it's in the next slide, you feel like you won't get it, but could you join me in a mindset of, you just don't have it yet? It actually matters to address the mindset in addition to any technical things. If they can't match the technical with the mindset, it will take longer or get stuck. So the initial inquiry and first lesson, it's sort of taking more time to inquire and investigate than, that's the suggestion, that you would spend more time just talking to them about their playing history, their goals, any setbacks, successes, because it's going to help you frame the future lessons and tasks. And then an interesting thing, and this is to discuss, I think we have to come to grips that this is from a podcast with Padre Harrington saying he's been in so many pro-ams, and many golfers are, the goal is to look good, hit it good, and have fun. And not everybody is going to win at any cost. And that means they may not be willing to work on bunker play or work on short game. And to maybe be okay that some people, if their stated goal is to enjoy it and hit it well, and they're happy, then that's okay. The mismatch of the goals and the work with them is where it can go a little bit awry. So it's interesting to really take seriously the goals as stated. And then a really valuable tool is the formal use of empathy, right? So what I hear you saying is you've been struggling with chipping, you've never really gotten it, and you're starting to give up hope that you can do it. That's that greasing the wheels of change, Kevin, that you were talking about. How do we loosen it up? You used to be longer. You used to carry your 7-iron longer, and you really want to get back to that, right? So you taking communicate. I know it seems strange sometimes, which is you're repeating what they've said from their perspective, but the accurate capturing of their experience, you get those, yeah, that's what it was like. That is what I want. And that greases the wheels for change. So framing responses from their perspective in this reflective listening style is very effective for that. Like here's
I think it's important because a lot of times students are coming in and one, they may be nervous to see you, or they're obviously there because something's wrong, and so they've got high anxiety because they can't chip or they can't do whatever.
Yeah.
And I think what you're saying here is it definitely eases some of their tension, especially when you repeat it back to them because they know that you're listening and you can empathize with them. And it's important to the learning process because a lot of times you just can't get somebody to do something because you can't crack through their head. They can do it physically, but they're just mentally just not there. And being able to empathize in a certain way, like you're discussing here, is so important.
And it really has a bearing on the narcissism. Remember, the other part is the idealized other image, which is they look up to you. They actually may be sort of stressed and are trying to impress you or do it right. And what I'm saying today is feel emboldened to notice that and speak to it, right? Are you feeling a lot of pressure to get this right today? Yeah, I do. Now that you say that and you see them sort of relax, like responding to them as player in the lesson, it is really helpful in helping them stay involved in the process and actually make progress, just the way you're saying, Kevin. And so this comes back to this idea that once they're starting to get some motor technique well, I think a great question is something as simple as what does it feel like? Because this idea of external cues, included in external cues, is anything away from the body. So saying like, there's a great one, I think, Kevin, you may know this one, like people a little more on top, they say, we'll just start the lawnmower to like get the sort of trail arm sort of back and moving sort of how it naturally does. Starting the lawnmower is deemed superior to, I want to get my elbow behind my chest. Because pointing to the body seems to be less durable and useful. So a fun thing to add to your coaching is and the whole theme of today is like a personalized, right, you version of performance is even though you may be setting up the mechanics similarly across certain students, the way they describe what it feels like they're doing may be very different. And you want to say, aha, that's, when you hear them say that, that's another empathy thing. You say, oh, okay, you actually sound like, you're taking your wrist and checking if it's ticking. So that's something you could use in the play box. Just check the time. because that's still an internal cue. So in terms of the communication of useful information, it's an interesting topic to talk about that. It's using that sort of analogies is useful and personalized to each person. And in the language and in their thinking of feels, more moving away from the body and more to what it feels like is recommended, is what I can say today.
Yeah, there's a question, and how do we change the mindset of when a player executes the shot well, but when they look at it, like, oh, that looked terrible.
Yeah,
right. You see that all the time. You absolutely flushed it. They did everything you did. It feels great. I mean, I'm actually reluctant to show it to them sometimes because I know I can see what it looks like. I'm like, just do it again. Let's
yeah.
polish it up a little bit. But
I have this cheeky slide of, you ever see that, like the Leonardo da Vinci's, like The Perfect Human, the Vesuvius or something, like in the thing, and then Adam Scott's head comes in and covers it, and it's like everybody the perfect swing is clean lines, right? You want them to drop their trail foot, and because it really helps them flush it. And that discrepancy between like it being like this sort of platonic ideal and what it looks like is a very interesting, another way to really make good use of empathy. I know you'd really prefer it to look a different way, but remember, you're also that strong, like admired person. You could say, I think it looks beautiful. And that's who you are, right? In the theme of trying to get them to embrace exactly the kind of person and player they are, you can use language and trying to help them validate their frustration that it doesn't look the way they want it to, but then shift them to enhancing, like, that you think that that's a beautiful way to swing the club. I also think giving people their spirit animal, that to say, you may not like the way it looks, but I think it works pretty well for Jason Day. Like, tell it, because we know it's sort of, it's not exact, but certain mechanics map very clearly on certain players. Supplying them with sort of like perfect examples that I can identify with is, I'm center post side cover. I mean, I don't know if everybody uses that language. I love the fact that I swing exactly like Rory. Like, I love the fact that's what I'm supposed to look like. So I embrace that. So I think the key point here at this stage of the game is noticing that they're struggling to take the change and that it's a visual thing. You acknowledge that and you say, you really would, that's another form of empathy and noticing them and understanding them and communicating that. That's the way to help grease the wheels for them to accept it, is you acknowledge their hesitation with it. And sometimes
I think it's up. I think it's up to,
how do you, we could have an hour on how to use the techniques of changing. If that's really stuck, there's more techniques for how do you get people to change their motivation to make a change that they don't like the way it looks.
I think it's on us as the coach to also to mold their picture a little bit differently.
Yeah.
And show them, hey, look, you can look like, would you want Bubba Watts' swing? I mean, Bubba Watson's not one of the prettiest swings out there.
Right.
It's pretty successful. Or Jim Furyk. I always use Jim Furyk as an example. Who wouldn't want Jim Furyk's career? Right?
Exactly.
There's no Jim Furyk golf school, right? I mean, Jim Furyk was top 20 in the money list 20 years, shot in the 50s 3 times, won majors, but there's no Jim Furyk golf school.
Agreed. And
so,
I have to say,
I think it's on us to change it.
But it also comes to acceptance of the player's goals, right? When they say, I don't like the way it looks, that makes me think of that. Let's be realistic about what the student wants from instruction and initially honoring that. That you could say, I think it's like also respecting their autonomy and independence, which is, I think you'll play your best with this change and it's going to look this way. You prefer to do it this other way. And sometimes you'll hit it well, right? You're the authority. Sometimes you'll hit it well. It's going to be probably a little less consistent, and that's okay. But like, just so you know, to play your best and shoot your lowest scores over time, I think this is the right way to go. So you see how like respectful that is, but it's strong. It's strong but respectful. Because that's like this idea of radical respect for the individual's autonomy in counseling, which is, even if I really feel strongly, at the end of the day, it's up to you. I empower you to decide how you're going to live your life, how you're going to be a player. And we can, in some sense, we can agree to disagree for now. But I think it is also a good example that you have to come to grips with some students is they really are invested in what it looks like and what it feels like. And they don't care as much about making their best score every day as you think they do, or as you think they might. It's not everybody's goal to get the lowest number on the card every day. And that's okay.
Yeah. Doc, I'm seeing some great comments. This was fantastic. It got pages of notes. I love the recording. So I appreciate your time. If there's any final questions, I haven't seen any in there, please let us know. If you want to get a hold of Dr. Klein, there's his information. This was, I want to thank the Met section and Caitlin for help putting this together and organizing it and everything. So thank you for everyone there. Yeah. And Doc, any final comments?
Again, I appreciate the very kind words. I've loved collaborating with you, Kevin, and thank you again for having me. The questions are amazing. I really see this as trying to open a conversation with you and all the coaches, who want to have these types of conversations. I don't think I have the final word on these. I'm trying to share some of these ideas and hoping to be in discussion in the future. And I am available for coaching for players. Some coaches subsequently have followed up with me. It's interesting. I call it consultation. Like, it's almost like I have this really challenging student. I don't know what to do. And in some cases, we've done a few like mini conversations with the coaches and try to help with that coaching technique and stuff. But if anybody, wanted me to come and do something at their course or with their membership or workshops, that's possible. I do have charactersport.com is up now if you want to, if you ever say, oh, well, okay, I'm willing to see a sports psychologist. That's also a resource to at least see where I am online. And I do love meeting with athletes in person. I'm a local person. This is the Met section. I live in Montclair, New Jersey. I know it's not always possible, but I do have a physical office. I'm in it now. And if there's ever a possibility, even to meet the player once is amazing, right? Because you make that personal connection. Right. Obviously, I do Zoom and phone sessions for the performance work, but I can also meet people in person if it's possible.
Doc, I had a good question come in.
Sorry.
How would you approach a player that had mental dominance for years, but somehow developed the fear of failure?
Oh, yeah. Okay, so what's really interesting is that my first thought about that is it has a bearing, I would guess, on that fixed versus flexible mindset, right? Which is they're struggling with this idea that maybe they had it like, I mean, I don't golf gets everybody, right? There are setbacks and you can have long stretches of good play or high confidence, and helping them to address this as it's very frustrating and it's been painful and a struggle, but gently coaxing them into this learning mindset that it's a flex. I mean, I do think the genius of the best players I work with is they really do embrace this learning mindset, that it's an opportunity to learn and grow as a person and a player. and I think a realistic assessment of everything we've discussed today. Is it in this? It's also, what are the skill areas? What do the stats say? What's keeping them from playing their best? And addressing things also like at the identity level, right? They're shaken their self-image and their self-confidence, maybe starting to discuss some of those more dynamic ideas about confidence. That, and they lean into, they're a hard worker and they have a great routine and they're courageous and they'll get in the play box and pull the trigger and temporarily lean into that to sort of take them through a round or a shot, and that the results will follow. Because the subtle idea of agency and control is, again, you can't control where it's going to fly, but you can control everything you do up until that, including courageously pulling the trigger. So it's expanding that mountain of their image of themselves as a player, hopefully that they can get a perch of strength back quicker, which is,
Right.
there are things I can lean into. I'm a hard worker. I'm relentless. And I'm open and honest with myself in terms of awareness of what's going on in my mind, rather than sort of suppressing it and pushing it down. I don't know if that perfectly answers the question.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a tough
Yeah.
question to answer generally without speaking to the person and
Yeah.
understanding
Here I'm not trying
where
to.
some of it comes from.
Exactly. This is the exact
So
kind of thing that if it's hard to unpack, that's a
yeah,
great referral for
I
me.
think,
Precisely the kind of thing I do.
Zach asked that question, and I'll have, Zach, I think if you want to dive into that deeper, you should reach out to Doc.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, off of this call and get into that.
I will say people have responded really favorably to this more process-oriented conversation about defining confidence for them and what works for them, and that it's not equated to ball striking anymore, has been exciting. And my main final thoughts is shifting performance into a set of trainable, learnable skills that are dynamic and evolve over time across the player's sort of life cycle is I think a way to talk about performance that gives more sort of room, right? The fun idea of a DJ to a Bryson on almost any parameter. And I hope it was almost touching to see that Tiger and Dunlap are very different, but really sort of titans of confidence, that he leaned into almost this sort of innocent fragility to accept the transience of the moment, which is a type of courage. And yet
Yeah.
a steely, I'll take on anybody anytime, is also a really cool way to be confident.
Yeah, terrific. Well, let's end it on that. I want to thank everybody for their time and jumping on here and listening in and asking some fantastic questions. Again, there's Dr. Klein's information's there. If I can ever do anything for anybody, please feel free to reach out to me. Again, thank you to the Caitlin and all the people behind the scenes in the Met section for helping put this together. Hope everyone has a great rest of the day. And if I don't see you, you'll have a great start to your season. Doc, look forward to talking to you again. And let's close it there. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, and appreciate your time and attention and conversation. It was great.
Perfect.